So the most basic part of Algebra 2 that you're going to need to know is how to solve equations and how to manipulate equations. And so just to begin, we need to do some basic definitions. So a formula is an equation that describes an important mathematical relationship. An equation that describes an important mathematical relationship. Most of the formulas that you know relate to geometry. There's formulas for area, perimeter, surface area, volume. There's also formulas for finding the missing side lengths of triangles. There's formulas to find slope. All of those different things are actually going to help you find something. So a literal equation is defined as an equation with that involves two or more variables. So an equation with two or more variables. Most of the equations that you will work with will have two variables in them. Sometimes they'll have three, but very rarely do they simply have one. So we're supposed to fill in these blanks. Again, a literal equation. This goes in that first blank. A literal equation is an equation that involves two or more variables. And a special type of literal equation is a formula which describes an important mathematical relationship. So if we wanted some examples of literal equations, well, we could write 2x plus 4y equals 12. That would be a literal equation because it has two or more variables. We could also do area equals base times height divided by 2 because that involves two or more variables. Or we could do something like x squared y equals 42, because again, that involves two or more variables. So we're going to begin this by actually practicing solving for y. When we solve for y, we have this first equation, 24 plus 2y equals 48. The whole goal of solving for y is to get y by itself. So that means I'm going to draw my line through my equal sign. I want my y's on the left-hand side of my equation, and I want everything else. I'm going to write EE, which stands for everything else, on the right-hand side. So if I need to get y by itself, the first thing I need to get rid of is the 24x. So I'm going to subtract 24x from both sides. So I end up with 2y equals 48 minus 24x. Recall that you cannot actually combine 24x and 48 together because 24 has x attached to it and 8 does not. So the last thing I would do to get y completely by itself is I need to get rid of that 2. And remember, whenever you have a number and a letter right next to each other, they are multiplied. There's an understood multiplication sign in between them. So to get rid of that, I need to divide, except do the opposite operation. So y is going to equal 48 divided by 2 is 24, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. So y equals 24 minus 12x. Now, the next problem gives us the exact same problem, but this time it asks us to solve it for x. It does not change the way we approach the problem, that we still want to get our x's on one side and everything else on the other, but it does change our steps that we take in there. So instead of getting rid of the 24y, I need to get rid of the 2y. I'm going to do that by subtracting 2y from both sides. So 24x equals 48 minus 2y. And then, again, to get rid of what's attached to x, remember when there's a number and a letter next to each other, they are multiplied. So to get rid of that 24, I'm going to divide both sides by 24. So I end up with x equals, well, 48 divided by 24 is 2, minus 2 divided by 24, I can't actually divide that, but I can reduce it, and it becomes 1 over 12y. So that would be the simplified version of solving this exact equation for x. So sometimes we have to write our own equations. So we have a problem. So Geeta is planning a birthday party. She has an $80 budget. Pizzas cost $5 each. 2-liter bottles of soda cost $3 each. And delivery is charged at a flat rate of $5. If she buys 12 pizzas, how many bottles of soda can she buy? So we need to write an equation that can help us solve this. So we've got to start with what we're given. We know she has $80 she can spend. So whatever she spends must equal 80. So we're going to start off with 80 equals. Pizzas cost $5 each, so we're going to call that 5p. 2-liter bottles of soda cost $3 each, so plus 3s. And delivery is charged at a flat rate of $5. When they charge a flat rate, that means no matter how much you order, you're going to have to pay $5. So we can just add 5 on, because that's not going to be any more or any less than 5. So the question says, if she buys 12 pizzas, how many bottles of soda can she buy? Well, if she's bought 12 pizzas, then we can replace our P with a 12 and utilize that information to help us solve the problem. So I have 80 equals 5 times 12 plus 3s plus 5. Well, 5 times 12 is 60. So I have 80 equals 60 plus 3s plus 5. And I can add my 60 and my 5 together because they're both numbers. They don't have any letters with them. So that would be 80 equals 65 plus 3s. And the last thing I need to do is, I need to have to solve this for s now. So I'm going to rewrite it over here because I'm out of space. So I have 80 equals 65 plus 3s. And I need to solve this for s. So that means I want my s's on one side, my numbers on the other. So I'm going to subtract 65 from both sides. 80 minus 65 is 15, and that equals 3s. And I need to get s completely alone, so in order to do that, I'm going to have to divide both sides by 3. So that tells me that s equals 5. So if Geeta bought 12 pizzas, then she could also buy 5 2-liter bottles of soda. So number 5 asks us to write some other equations. So 5a says, how long will it take Karen to drive 975 miles if her average speed is 65 miles per hour? Well, this requires you to have a little bit of background knowledge. And so back in science, I believe, or possibly in middle school, you learned about the triangle that can be utilized to help you relate the formulas for distance, speed, and time. So, and that's what they've given us here. They've given us a distance of 975 miles. They've given us a speed of 65 miles per hour. And when they ask us how long, they're asking us about time. So that tells us that from this triangle, we can see here that time is equal to our distance divided by our speed. Well, our distance is 975. Our speed is 65. And if we divide 975 by 65, we're going to get 15. And our time is going to be measured in hours because it did tell us that it was miles per hour. So it would be 15 hours. Part B says a rectangular pool has a tile border around its perimeter that measures 66 feet. If the length of the pool is 18 feet, what is the width of the pool? So we need to talk about perimeter. Anytime it talks about a shape, we should probably draw a picture because it just helps us to see what we're doing. So here's our pool. Our perimeter is 66. We know that it is 18 feet in length. So I'm going to put that on two sides. And we're supposed to find the width. Well, my formula for perimeter is 2L plus 2W equals our perimeter, which equals 66. We know that our length is 18, so 2 times 18 plus 2W equals 66. 2 times 18 is 36 plus 2W equals 66. And now I can solve this for W. So I'm going to Draw my line through my equal sign first. And this line just helps me see that I have a left side and a right side, because the rule in math says whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. And I end up with 2w equals 30. And then for my final step, to get w completely alone, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I get that my width for the pool would be 15. Part C says that a current of 0.05 amps is driven by a voltage of 0.6 volts. What is the resistance measured in ohms? Well, there's a formula from physics or chemistry that says that our voltage is equal to our current, which is described by the letter I, times our resistance. So our voltage is 0.6, our current, which is I, is 0.05, and our resistance is what we don't know. So plugging in, we have 0.6 equals 0.05 times R. To get R by itself, I can divide both sides by 0.05, and I end up with 12 equals the resistance. And it is supposed to be measured in ohms, so we could write ohms, or you can write the symbol for ohms, which is this weird looking symbol here. And lastly, D says, a thermometer shows a patient's temperature to be 39 degrees Celsius. What is the patient's temperature in degrees Fahrenheit? Well, our formula that relates Fahrenheit to Celsius is 9/5C plus 32 equals F. And we're given the temperature in degrees Celsius, so that's going to be C. So that's 9/5 times 39 plus 32 equals F. And we can actually just plug that in the calculator. 9/5 times 39 plus 32 is going to give us a grand total of 102.2 degrees. And it is measured in Fahrenheit. So moving on to the checkup, as always, I will do the odds and you'll be responsible for doing the evens. So for number 1, we're supposed to solve for y, so I'm going to draw my line. If I'm going to solve for y, the first thing I need to do is subtract 3x from both sides. So I get that 4y equals 17 minus 3x. And then to get y completely alone, I'm going to divide everything by 4. And I can't actually divide 17 by 4, so I'm going to leave it as 17/4. And the same thing is true with 3/4. I can't really divide 3 by 4, so I'm going to leave it as 3/4x. So number 3, I'm supposed to solve this for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So we end up with 6y equals 18 minus 3x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6. And I end up with y equals 18 divided by 6 is 3. I can't divide 3 by 6, but I can reduce that, and it does give me 1/2, so minus 1/2 x. So that would be my equation solved for y. Numbers 5 through 8 are a little bit different, and we have not had any like this before. So we're solving a formula for a specific variable. So these are a little bit interesting. So number 5 says the formula for the area of a triangle is area equals 1/2 the base times the height. And we're supposed to solve this equation for B. So if I'm solving this equation for B, so rewriting, I have just A equals 1/2 BH. If I'm solving this for B, as I draw my line down the middle, that means I want B on one side and I want everything else on the other. So my B is already on the right, so I want to keep it there. So that means that on the left side should be everything else, which is my numbers, A and H. Everything else should be over there. So we have to think about on the right side what's happening to that 1/2, that b, and that h. Since they're all right there next to each other, they're being multiplied together. So in order to get rid of them, I need to divide. So I'm going to start by getting rid of the h. I'm going to divide both sides by h. It's going to cancel out my h's on the left, and I'm going to be left with a over h equals 1/2 b. So then to get rid of my b, or my 1/2, I'm sorry, I need to divide both sides by 1/2. But there's actually a little bit of a trick to that, because we don't like fractions to begin with. So instead of dividing by 1/2, I can actually multiply by the reciprocal, which means I can multiply by 2 over 1. And by doing that, it cancels out my fraction. And the rule in math says I can do whatever I want as long as I do it to both sides. So if I multiply both sides by 2 over 1, I end up with 2 times the area divided by the height equals the base. And this would be my formula solved for b. Since these problems are a little more challenging, I'm going to go ahead and do 6 with you as well. So we have a equals f over m, and we're supposed to solve this for m. So that means I need m on one side and everything else on the other. Well, the problem with leaving m on the right is that it's in the denominator, and I can't have it in the denominator. So instead, I'm going to do this. I don't like fractions, but it's a true statement that if one side is a fraction, it's actually easier to make the other side a fraction as well, because then you can cross multiply and get rid of your fractions. So if I cross multiplied, I would end up with am equals f. Well, now this is easy because I need to get m by itself, which means that f and a need to be on the other side. So to get rid of that a, I'm going to divide both sides by a. So m equals f divided by a. Number 7, the formula for converting Fahrenheit to Celsius is F equals 9 over 5c plus 32. And we're supposed to solve for c. So I'm going to rewrite F equals 9 over 5c plus 32. So I need to get c by itself. That means I want c on the right side, because that's where it already is. And I'm going to want f and all of my numbers on the left side. So to get rid of 32 first would be the best bet. So I'm going to minus 32 from both sides. So I have f minus 32 equals 9 over 5c. Well, normally to get rid of the number in front of the letter, we divide, but as we mentioned earlier, instead of dividing by 9 over 5, I can actually multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal is the flipped form of that, and that's really nice because it cancels those fractions out. And if I do that to one side, I have to do it to the other side. So I would leave it 9 over 5 times f minus 32 equals c, and that would be our solved equation. So number 8, the formula for the area of a circle is area equals pi r squared. We're supposed to solve for r. So area equals pi r squared. So I need to get my r on one side. That means I want my area and my pi and something about that squared to be on the other side. So to get rid of pi, well, pi and r are right next to each other, so they're multiplied. So I'm going to divide both sides by pi. So I get that the area divided by pi equals r squared. Well, to undo this squared here, to get rid of this exponent, all I have to do is take the square root of both sides. And I can't actually take the square root of a over pi because I don't know what a is. So it's going to be the square root of a over pi equals r. And number 9, Jessica is riding her bike at a speed of 6 miles per hour. How long has she been riding if she has traveled 14 miles? So again, we can use our triangle that relates distance, speed, and time. The question is asking us how long, so that's our time. So if we cover up t, we're left with d over s, so distance divided by speed. Well, her distance was 14, her speed was 6, and 14 divided by 6 gives us 2.3 hours.